welcome to the Impact webinar. Carbon Capture in MENA, Strategic Paths for Establishing the Global CCUS Powerhouse. My name is Onam Shah, and I'm a Senior Content Analyst from Leader Associates. It's my great honor and privilege to be your host of today's webinar. This webinar is also a virtual content of MENA's leading CCUS event, Carbon Capture MENA Summit, which will take place on February 25th to 26th at Madinah Jumeirah Conference Center in Dubai. The MENA region is redefining its role in global energy landscape by establishing itself as a global leading CCUS powerhouse. With its abundant natural resources, advanced industrial infrastructure, and strategic focus on decarbonization, MENA region has already committed over $50 million in investments, targeting more than 50 million tons per annum of CCUS capacity by 2035. However, realizing this ambitious vision requires addressing critical challenges, including infrastructure development, long-term policy framework, and cost optimization. As a countdown event to the upcoming Carbon Capture MENA Summit, this high-level webinar will convene distinguished leaders and experts from the CCUS value chains. The discussion will focus on the strategic paths for MENA region to solidify the global leadership in CCUS, emphasizing innovative technologies, cross-sector collaborations, and supportive policy mechanism. And during this webinar, I also encourage all of you to actively engage in our discussions, ask thought-provoking questions, and showcase your invaluable insights. Together, let's chart a future-proof pathway that consolidates international CCUS supply chain and capitalize on the potentials that lie within the rapidly evolving industry. Without further ado, I would like to invite our opening keynote speaker on stage, Ms. Lucy King, the Principal Analyst of CCUS from Mackenzie. And she will provide us with an overview of the global CCUS landscape and dive deeply into the key trends and emerging opportunities of the key CCUS markets around the globe. So hi, Lucy. The floor is open for you right now. Welcome on stage.
That's great. Perfect. Thanks for the introduction and thanks for having me today. So my presentation is focused on setting the scene from a global perspective, looking at the global CCUS landscape and highlighting the key trends and emerging opportunities that are unfolding. So I based this presentation off of a piece of work that WoodMac produced towards the end of last year, where we highlighted the 5 things to look for in 2025. And this report is actually available for download using a link which I'll post after my presentation into the event chat. So if you'd like to find out more, please check it out. So kicking off with our first thing to look for, 2025 is going to be a pivotal year for the CCUS industry. The first half of this decade has been characterized by growth, where we've seen operational capacity grow to over 70 MTPA. Most of this is currently located in the US, where operational capacity is primarily associated with enhanced oil recovery. But there's a further 1.5 billion tons per year of capacity in the planned stages of development that could become operational before 2030. But for that to happen, we need to see attention pivot from project announcements to project execution. And that's what we think will happen in 2025. This year, we expect a record number of FIDs could take place. On an unrisked basis, we estimate around 200 projects are working towards FID this year. This equates to 500 million tons of capacity, or 500 million tons per year of capacity, sorry. On a risked basis, this falls to just shy of 300 MTPA, but this would still represent the largest amount of capacity ever approved in a single year. Now, for most of these projects, it's crunch time. Their capacities will underpin country, company, and regional level 2030 targets, which is now less than 5 years away. And if these projects fail to go ahead or face delays, these targets could be in real jeopardy. But we're already starting to see these projects move through key development milestones. This chart on the far right is showing the rate of growth across the different development stages of a project's life cycle, where we've managed to show by indexing the capacity within each status. Over the past year, we've seen an uptick in projects taking FID and also moving into operations or starting injection or starting capturing CO2. Now, we expect this trend to continue this year with some significant startups on the cards. The largest direct air capture project globally which is the first phase of the Stratos project, is set to start operations in the US. And this will be a huge milestone, not just for the project, but for the whole DAC industry. Its execution will be a crucial milestone in understanding future project costs, operations, and challenges. Unfortunately, though, not all progress will be in the same direction. With a growing number of cancellations experienced throughout 2024, we do expect this to continue into this year. Most of these will be a result of cost, and that's because the cost of CCUS remains high, and the cost remains a universal challenge for all projects across the value chain, especially where policies and support are absent or insufficient. Now, our second thing to look out for this year is focused around CO2 shipping. CO2 shipping, especially in the context of cross-border transport of CO2, will be essential in seeing a large portion of the capacity we saw on the previous slide progressing. But in recent years, low technology readiness, high financial liabilities and risks, high costs, and regulation have all been commercial blockers for it. However, this is set to change this year, where we'll see commercial scale CO2 shipping become a reality with the startup of the Northern Lights project in Norway. The first emitter will ship captured CO2 from a domestic cement plant stored under the North Sea. But later this year, we'll also see the first commercial scale cross-border transport of CO2, where CO2 will be captured from an ammonia plant in the Netherlands and shipped to the same storage site in Norway. This will be a significant milestone, not just for Northern Lights itself, but for the global CCUS and CO2 shipping industry. And like I said just before, the cross-border transport of CO2 via shipping will be essential in unlocking emissions from countries where there are limited options for domestic CO2 storage. And you can start to get a feel for the countries in those positions from this chart on the left. So this is showing country-level capture and storage capacities that have been announced to date. You can see that there are plenty of countries with excess capture relative to storage, such as the likes of Japan, France, Sweden, and Germany. These countries will be dependent on exporting their captured CO2 to countries with excess CO2 storage, such as the likes of Malaysia, Australia, and Norway. Now, overall, the two main regions where CO2 shipping will be a critical lever in advancing their CCUS industries are Northwest Europe and Southeast Asia. But the dominant barrier standing in the way is the associated policy and regulation. The cross-border transport of CO2 is illegal under the London Protocol for any countries that have not adopted and applied the appropriate policy amendment and subsequently then entered into a bilateral agreement. Norway and the Netherlands were both proactive in policy adoption and two of the first countries to enter into such an agreement to allow the Northern Lights project to progress to the stage it's at. Now, over the past few years, we've seen a wave of bilateral agreements signed in Europe, but now we expect APAC to take centre stage, with the likes of Malaysia, South Korea, Japan, and Australia all exploring shipping options as either importers or exporters of CO2. So I think this year will be key in seeing some agreements in place between those countries. So now moving on to our third point, or our third thing to watch out for this year. So this is focused around the CCUS corporate landscape, which remains incredibly fragmented, with over 600 companies involved in at least one of the 1,000 or so projects that we are currently tracking in the planned or operational development stages. And you can get a sense for the range of companies involved from this chart here, where we're showing the top 20 companies by capacity, split out by region where that capacity is located. The majors are all playing prominent roles, primarily on the transport and storage side of things. But then you also have companies who are focused on single elements of the CCUS value chain, such as infrastructure specialists and emitters themselves. Now, as a result of this fragmented landscape, we've seen M&A gather traction in recent years, with notable deals including ExxonMobil's acquisition of Denbury in 2023 and the merger of Schlumberger and Aker Carbon Capture in 2024. This year, we expect even more M&A, with three key drivers playing a prominent role. The first is portfolio rationalization. So as attention pivots to project maturation, costs and economics will be firmly in the spotlight. As you'll see in a few slides time, the economics of CCUS projects can widely range, but most are marginal. So competition for capital within corporate portfolios will be rife, and only the best projects will progress. So companies may look to reduce risk and financial liability by either farming out interests or completely divesting assets that don't quite hit the mark. The second driver will be corporate CCUS targets. There is an increasing pressure on companies to decarbonize, and as a result, CCUS is rapidly becoming integrated into energy transition strategies. Many of the companies you can see on this chart here have implemented corporate CCUS targets, the first wave of which are expected in 2030. Now, some are on track to meet these targets, whilst others look challenged. And with 2030 now less than 5 years away, inorganic growth may be the primary route to ensuring that these targets are met. And finally, we have strategic partnerships. So developing a CCUS project is challenging. It's costly, it's high risk, and plagued with uncertainty. But across the wide range of companies involved in CCUS, there is an extensive assortment of skills, knowledge, and experience that, if you combine all of that together, could complement each other in combating these challenges and help to excel a project's progression. And this could be companies from across the value chain joining forces, or perhaps competitors within a single element of the chain, such as what we saw with Schlumberger and Aker Carbon Capture last year. Our fourth thing to watch for this year is focused around CO2 storage. So this point is a bit more thematic, but nonetheless an important point to highlight for this year. So by 2030, we expect permanent CO2 storage to represent the end destination for over 80% of captured CO2, with each region playing a prominent and key role. However, where each region is in terms of its CO2 licensing journey is very much dependent on the degree of industry maturity and its relative demands for CO2 storage. So if we start off by looking at Europe first, the last few years have been characterized by a bit of a licensing rampage. In total, there are over 50 active storage licenses across the continent, 44 of which have been awarded in the last 3 years. And you can see from this chart on the far left that most activity has been across the UK, Netherlands, Norway, and Denmark. To date, only 6 of these have been converted to a storage license. The rest remain in appraisal stage, where outstanding work commitments will likely take centre stage this year. And what we mean by work commitments are things like exploration and appraisal wells, seismic surveys, injection tests, and so on. These are essential elements that are part of maturing a license towards the active storage or operational stage of the project. And so for focus to pivot onto work commitments, we do expect the rate of new license awards to slow down. Shifting our focus now to the US, we expect a record number of Class 6 permits could be approved this year. These are essential permits required on a single well basis to allow a project to commence CO2 injection. Up to 36 decisions are estimated for 2025, which is a jump from just 8 last year. And these decisions, they can come from both the Environmental Protection Agency and states with primacy over Class 6 wells. Now, primacy, this is one of the greatest determinants in the length of the application process, slashing decision times by over 50%. And this is where the state itself has the power to grant the Class 6 permits rather than the EPA. Currently, only 4 states hold primacy, but we expect more states will progress towards this or gaining this in 2025. And then finally, in APAC, we expect governments will continue to lay down policy foundations for future licensing rounds. So CO2 storage will have a critical role to play in the coming years across the likes of Indonesia, New Zealand, Thailand, and India. There's ample announced storage capacity across the region, as you can see from this map on the far right, which is from our Lens Carbon platform, where we're showing announced storage capacity by development status. And you can see that most of this storage capacity is sitting in the prospect or early stage of development, meaning it's mostly unlicensed. So to see this capacity mature, appropriate policies and legislation to support it will need to be put in place. And we think that this year will be a key year for governments ensuring that this is in place to support future licensing activity. And that brings me to my final thing to look for this year, which is centered around the cost of CCUS. So I touched on this briefly at the start, but the cost of CCUS remains high for the majority of industries looking at CCUS. As a nascent technology, it also comes hand in hand with high risk and uncertainty. And when you group that all together, what you get is a project that is unlikely to progress without some form of incentive, policy, or funding, most likely through government intervention. Now, at WoodMac, we've been doing analysis into the cost of CCUS and the approaches that different countries are taking to incentivize these projects to progress. And that's what we're trying to present in this chart here, which I know looks a bit overwhelming, but I think it really represents the depth of coverage that we've been able to base our analysis off that exists within our Lens Carbon platform that's accessible to our clients. So this chart is showing the results of our economic analysis into about 180 global CCUS projects across all parts of the CCUS value chain. Each dot represents an individual project with the flag to indicate the country in which it's located, the size being its project capacity, and we've plotted these against their levelized costs and their IRRs. Now, there are a few things that I want you to take away from this. So the first is that the cost of these projects can widely vary. Cost can be influenced by a range of factors, but two of the main ones are development type and industry source. So hub projects, which are typically transport and storage in scope, tend to sit with lower levelized costs. And you can see these projects with the larger capacities clustered below that $100 per ton mark. The majority of the projects on the chart, though, are capture, and this is where we see the most variation. This comes down really to the industry source of the CO2, so whether it's cement, power generation, or hydrogen. The second point is that in addition to a wide variation in costs, we see a wide variation in returns. And that largely comes down to the different approaches the governments are taking to incentivize CCUS. Every country is taking its own unique approach to this. Some are choosing tax credits, such as the US with its 45Q. Others have complex business models, such as in the UK. And others are instead looking towards something like a contracts with different scheme, such as in the Netherlands and Denmark. While some governments are choosing to incentivize hub developments, most are choosing to support the emitters, as it's really the emitters who bear the greater risk. But what we found overall is that government support alone is usually not enough. The best returns are seen across projects that are able to stack incentives, such as combining government support with, say, compliance, carbon pricing, and carbon credits, which can then be sold on the voluntary carbon market. And this is actually another really interesting aspect that we cover in detail within our Lens Carbon platform. So overall, though, it's a constantly evolving landscape. Countries are really turning on their heels to ensure appropriate policies and support schemes are in place to allow these projects to progress. But even countries with existing policies and support are still evolving their approaches to better suit the economics of these projects. And that brings me to the end of my presentation, and happy to have any questions.
So the first question that we really want to ask you, or some audience are curious about, is aside from the decarbonization of the hydrocarbon operation, what business models for CCUS are emerging in the Middle East region, in your opinion?
I think in the Middle East, we're seeing attention on the likes of hydrogen and natural gas processing. I think efforts to date have really been focused on kind of lower cost kind of abatement industries where the cost of CCUS isn't necessarily as much of a barrier across heavier industries. So yeah, I think that's what we've seen defining activity in the Middle East to date.
Thank you, Lucy. So the second question is, can you really help us explain the role of CCUS products in the content of carbon credits and whether green hydrogen is a better alternative for decarbonization, especially in the MENA region?
In terms of, I mean, carbon credits, I guess there are very many applications of CCS where projects can look to receive carbon credits. Most of these are through the capture of biogenic CO2, such as from waste to energy applications or biomass, bioenergy. All of these projects will be eligible to receive carbon credits either as a primary source of revenue or in addition to other forms of revenue. Like I mentioned on my last slide, I think what we're seeing the best results with are those projects that are able to stack incentives where a project isn't necessarily reliant on just one revenue stream. But these carbon credits, they can then be sold on the voluntary carbon market. And we're seeing a lot of these projects crop up in Northwest Europe, especially across the likes of Sweden, Norway, and Denmark, where countries are really, or governments are making large government funding pools available to progress these projects. In terms of how this compares to green hydrogen, I'm honestly not too sure of the comparison there, but I mean, in terms of carbon credits for CCUS, there is a lot of potential there.
Thank you, Lucy. So we have actually two more questions that I think our audience are also really curious to learn from you. So what impact do you think the Net Zero Industry Act that you just mentioned will have on licensing activities in Europe?
Yeah, so this is an act that that came into force across the EU last year, and it sets a 50 MTPA storage target across EU member states, with the potential for this to increase to something around 80 MTPA potentially if the likes of Norway is included. So I mentioned earlier on that we don't expect the rate of new storage awards to increase across Europe, and I think that is still kind of what we expect even with the NZIA. I think the route to achieving that target will be through maturing existing projects with existing licenses, and Europe's oil and gas producers, they have an obligation to meet this target based on their share of hydrocarbon production. And I think the way they'll do that is either through developing the existing licenses or farming into licenses that they don't necessarily have a stake in currently.
Thank you, Lucy. So speaking of so many countries or market that you just explained in the CCUS global market, what country is actually taking the best approach for the incentives and or just policy supporting of CCUS in your opinion, your research?
I think there's not really a single country that's necessarily taking the right approach. I think because every country is taking its own kind of unique approach, we are seeing such a range of incentives and support systems emerge. And I think they have their own benefits and disadvantages. I mean, something like the US with its 45Q, it's a system where kind of any project is eligible to receive it. Whereas something like the UK, its business models are incredibly complex and there is a large funding pool available for the projects. However, it's very kind of tight, like very restricted in terms of the projects that can currently access that. And the timelines for future support are very uncertain. So I think I would say there isn't really a country that's necessarily doing it the right way, but there are a lot of good schemes that are emerging.
Thank you, Lucy, for your very detailed answer and participation in today's webinar. I think the global CCUS outlook that you just shared with us has perfectly paved the way for following discussion regarding the specific market, including MENA region and Europe. And I really look forward to hear more of your insights at our upcoming in-person carbon capture MENA summit on February 25th and 26th. So
Thank you.
next part, I think I will just jump strictly to our next panel keynote speech, and which featuring Mr. Wonsik, the VP of Sustainable Solution Sales from Samsung E&A, and he will deliver a keynote speech on the future carbon capture technology in Middle East. So, Mr. Wonsik, the floor is open for you right now. Welcome on stage.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you good.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. Okay, let me see. Can you see my screen? Can anybody confirm that you can see my screen? Can you see my screen?
Hi, Mr. Cho. We can see your screen right now.
Okay. Yeah, let me start. This session is about future carbon capture technologies in the Middle East. With the actual pilot projects that Samsung ENA has been involved. Wonsik Cho, Vice President of Samsung ENA's Sustainable Solutions Sales Team. So my team is responsible for the business development and sales and marketing for energy transition projects, including blue, green, ammonia, hydrogen, and also CCUS and renewable fuels projects. So for this session, I'm gonna focus on a new carbon capture technologies that Samsung ENA has been involved. So a brief introduction of Samsung ENA. Samsung ENA has been founded, was founded in 1970 as the first EPC contractors in Korea. And also Samsung ENA delivers more than 1,600 projects all over the globe, and also, has been operating in more than 47 countries with a revenue of about $8 to $9 billion a year, with it's about 19-20 billion-dollar of backlog. So Samsung ENA has main office in Seoul with over 15 global offices, including the Asia, Middle East, and the US. But Samsung ENA has been very focusing on the EPC markets in the Middle East, including the Saudi, UAE, and Kuwait, and so on. So Samsung ENA has been focusing on the business expansions and 4 different categories like hydrogen, sustainable fuels, and carbon management and waste management. So unlike traditional EPC businesses bidding against the ITB, Samsung ENA has been deeply involved in the initial project development and also technology commercialization, including based on the partnership with the existing licensors, and also throughout the investment to the venture companies developing new technologies. So and also based on that, Samsung ENA is delivering the fire services and EPC all the way through the O&M. Okay. So let's talk about the carbon capture technology. So as carbon capture used to be a CO2 separation in the past, utilizing the amine or solvent, right? So amine-based solvent technology is the most it's a mature technology in terms of hydrogen sulfide removal, but now this technology has been geared toward CO2 separation, so CO2 capture. So there are 2 main application of those carbon capture technologies. One is pre-combustion, and the other one is post-combustion. So traditionally, the amine-based solvent technology requires a large a absorber tower and also regeneration towers, and including all the exchangers and equipment in between, right? So for those main amine-based solvent amine-based technologies, one of the things that we see a kind of big challenge in the market is that it requires a large footprints, and also and smaller footprints where a lot of carbon capture opportunities that requires a smaller footprints because of the many of them are actually going into existing refineries or existing facilities where they don't have enough space to put a large scale unit, right? So for those to tackle those kind of challenges, Samsung ENA has been working with the 2 companies. The first one is the Carbon Clean, and the other one is Svante. Both of them, Samsung ENA has some stakeholders through the investment. So first of all, the Carbon Clean technology is based on RPB, so it's a rotating pack bed. So rotating pack bed is literally replacing the tall observer tower and regen tower if needed, the quench towers and so on. So basically, this technology is is replacing a gravity based carbon capture with through the solvent, and based on that, it requires much less footprints, and also you don't need tall towers, which is becoming a kind of a challenge when you put those kind of unit in the existing brownfield. So this is the two technologies, the carbon clean and Svante. So carbon clean, as you can see in the middle, you see the rotating pack bed instead of a tall tower. As you can see from this 3D rendering, you don't see any tall towers right here and there. So usually solvent based carbon capture technology requires at least 30 to 35 meter tall absorber, and also the regeneration towers, and also quench towers. All those kind of tall towers has been replaced with the rotating pack bed, and this rotating pack bed increases the what is that, the contact area through the centrifugal force within the rotating pack bed. So this is the a perfect application for a carbon capture for a smaller footprints, and also when you need to put this kind of a carbon capture unit into the existing brownfield, this is actually a very, very good alternative to amine based conventional solvent tower based carbon capture unit. So the other one is the Svante. Svante is a little bit different. So traditional carbon capture technology is based on absorbing, but this is based on adsorption. So it's based on solid sorbents and adsorbent, and it's more like a filter, right? So filter cartridges, and it rotates. We call it a RAM. So this rotary adsorption machine will rotate while the left-hand section of this filter cartridges absorbs the CO2 out of the flue gas, and then while it rotates, it's going to be regenerated with the low pressure steam, and then dried out, and then CO2 will be released, and then it captures the CO2 again. So this does not need any kind of a solvent or chemicals, but it is more like a filter kind of mechanism. So the currently, so we are working with Svante to standardize the ORSA 1000 model, which is a 1,000 ton per day carbon capture capacity, and also developing 2,000 model as well. So this is basically, the biggest benefit of this technology is that you don't need a solvent or chemicals, and also you can optimize the OpEx by utilizing the some kind of waste heat available, because this regeneration of this filter cartridge can be can happen with very low pressure steam, which is usually not a valuable utilities in the existing facilities. So those two technologies are the one that Samsung ENA has been working closely with the to commercialize, and also apply to the different applications. So this is the actual example, or the actual projects that has been announced. So Samsung ENA and Carbon Clean is working on the pilot test of 10 ton per day pilot plant in UAE. So the pilot test has been going on, and it's completed. And then we're gonna continue the test of this unit at a lower CO2 concentration, which is the flue gas from the gas turbine. So the pilot test for low concentration CO2 will be done with Saudi Aramco. And currently we are working at Aramco's facility to prepare the times once, and also we plan to move the modular unit to the site sometime in March, April timeframe. Then we're going to continue that pilot test at the low concentration CO2, and then once the pilot test is pilot campaign is done, then we're going to move that unit to another location where we have a high CO2 concentration. So this is the very compact RPB-based carbon capture unit that we are jointly pilot testing with ADNOC and also Saudi Aramco. So, and I guess that's it. So, any questions about this RPB and the RAM-based carbon capture? These are the two new carbon capture technologies that Samsung E&A is working very, very hard to commercialize into the market.
Mr. Wonsik, many thanks for your sharing, and I believe it's such a solid presentation that help us audience better understand how does the technology evolve in the helm of CCUS. So for the next part, I would like to select some a really interesting question from our audience who are eager to learn more about the cutting edge innovation taking place, especially from the perspective of Samsung E&A. So first of all, speaking of the really featured Cyclone CC, can you elaborate on Samsung E&A's role in the Cyclone CC demonstration project and what unique expertise you bring to this partnership?
Yeah, so the partnership is based on a Carbon Clean is the venture company focusing on the technology development, right? While Samsung E&A is a proven EPC contractors with track record of delivering the modular units into Middle East and Asian countries, right? So this is a very good collaboration model. While the technology company Carbon Clean is focusing on developing the solvent and the RPB, while Samsung E&A is packaging those technologies, including all the OSBRs and the utilities, right? So I mean, this model has been very successful, and we are, as I said before, we are doing the test campaigns in 2 locations, one in UAE and the other one in Saudi, and based on that performance, we plan to build a commercial scale carbon capture unit based on Cyclone CC to one of the couple of customers in the Middle East.
Thank you, Mr. Wonsik. As we all know, capturing carbon dioxide from stream with low constriction is actually a huge challenge for the industry. So how does Samsung E&A contribute to optimizing the system's efficiency in the real world conditions?
So I think 2 things. First of all, I mean, we need to make sure that we have a higher capture performance with a low concentration, low CO2 concentration based on the performance of the solvent, and also okay, there's some background noise here, but and the second thing is that on top of the improved solvent performance, we need to make sure that there is enough contact, right? So typically, you increase the contact or surface contact through the gravity flow, but this rotating RPB is basically utilizing the centrifugal force to improve the contacts between the solvent and the flue gas. That's how this technology achieves the higher capture rate even at the lower concentration. So I guess that's the magic behind this, right?
Thank you for all of your detailed answer, Mr. Wonsik, and I'm looking forward to meeting in person at both of our really featured in-person event, which is Carbon Capture MENA Summit, as well as our Connecting Hydrogen MENA 2025. And thank you so much for joining this virtual session today.
Okay, thank you. Looking forward to it.
In the next session, please allow me to introduce Mr. Lars Jacob Elberg, Assistant Director from Norwegian Ministry of Energy. And Mr. Elberg will share with us the Norwegian leading experience in financing and partnership in CCUS project which should be a classic reference for other emerging CCUS like MENA region. So Mr. Elberg, welcome on stage.
Thank you very much. And can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, I can hear you good.
That's good. Good to hear. Let me just see if I can share my screen as well. And of course, that's being, there we are. Can you see my presentation okay? Can anyone confirm that?
Yes, but it's actually from the presenter mode. I think we suggest you to adjust it to the full display.
Let me see. What about now? Is it still in presentation mode?
Yeah, it's in full display mode.
Display now, okay. So it's looking okay?
Yeah, it's looking pretty good. You can go
Good.
ahead.
So you see it in presentation in full screen mode, right?
Yes.
That's good too. Okay, apologies for the technical glitches. My name is Lars Jacob Alverberg. I work with the Norwegian Ministry of Petroleum and Energy, or sorry, the Norwegian Ministry for Energy, as it's called now. We had the name change not too long ago, so there we are. Old tricks die hard and so on. And thank you for allowing Norway to present a brief overview of the policies we have on CCS in Norway. I've been with the ministry for a number of years, and up until this summer, I was Counselor for Energy at the Norwegian Embassy in the US. I've also had the international aspect fresh in mind, also when it comes to CCS. And I should say that to Norway as a petroleum producing nation and as a nation very much engaged in climate change, CCS is a vital part of our national policy. And our government's main objectives can be summed up roughly in these 4 points. We want to contribute to the deployment of CCS globally. Norway is a small nation, but we want to do our part. We want to establish a new green industry domestically, and of course, hopefully also for export purposes. We want to achieve commercial CO2 storage in Norway and internationally, and we want to capture CO2 from Norwegian emissions. I would like to emphasize, though, that the international aspect is very important. As I will get to in a minute, we have several big projects in Norway, but the main objective of Norwegian CCS policies is to contribute to the international deployment of CCS technology. So, you know, Norway is a small country. We have emissions, but they're relatively speaking small in an international context. And we want to do not just for ourselves, but also contribute internationally. And that's been a red sort of thread going through our thinking on CCS. CCS in Norway has started several decades ago. We had the first commercial decision to store CO2 under the seabed made by the operator Equinor at the Sleipner oil field on the Norwegian continental shelf. And this is an illustration from the Sleipner field. It's old and a bit quirky, but there we are. The Sleipner field made a decision to store CO2 from the gas it produced due to the high CO2 content in the gas, combined with the high price on CO2 emissions that we have in Norway and have had since 1991. So the decision was made, and the Sleipner field started to store CO2 under the seabed in 1996. In 2007 or 8, the Snow White or Snøhvit LNG plant in the Arctic part of Norway followed along the same path for very much the same reasons. So we have time series data on how CO2 behaves underground, which has been an important contribution from Norway to the international community with regards to CO2 management as well. We also have a large test facility for CO2 treatment at Mongstad on the west coast of Norway. It's called the TCM, or Test Center Mongstad. It's a very flexible, very agile plant that allows several types of sources to be tested and combined, and technology, and you can then hire yourself into that center. And it's been internationally a great success. I met a lot of people in the US that have used TCM, and it's been really a world leader in developing capture technology from various concentrations of CO2 in this plant. It's partly owned by the government and partly owned by a number of companies, commercial companies operating on the Norwegian continental shelf. Moving on, Norway believes that this is the right thing to do. We are seeing from the Norwegian and the European perspective an increase in price of emissions. And we are also seeing, as the slide sort of indicates, and don't get too caught up in the numbers here, but a falling cost curve as technology develops over time. So as DNV, the Norwegian company slash certification institution says, I mean, cost will fall with 10% every doubling of capacity. Again, we believe that this will mature the industry over time, and as I will get to in a minute, this has been sort of underpinning what we've done on the Norwegian continental shelf with regards to CO2 as well. Now, our big pride and joy is the Longship project. The Longship project, I'm sure some of you or many of you have heard of it, but just to be very, very brief, it's a full value chain, open source, industrial scale CO2 project that aims to capture CO2 from in phase one, or now in phase one, from one cement factory on the east coast. You see it here on the map as Brevik CCS. It's a 107-year-old cement factory. Further down the line, we also hope to capture CO2 from a waste incineration plant, the Celsio CO2 capture project shown on the map. This CO2, these volumes are then transported by ship to the west coast, where it is offloaded into a receiving terminal called the Northern Lights terminal. Northern Lights is just a name for the transport and storage part of the Longship project. So the volumes are shipped from the east to the west coast, offloaded into this terminal, which you'll see in a minute, and then piped through seabed pipeline out to the storage site, down through the well, and 2,600 meters below the seabed, it finds its safe and permanent home. Phase one is 1.5 million tons per year. It will not be the full volumes coming from the Norwegian continental shelf, and as you can see here as well, there are several European projects that are tapping into this project as well. Yara, Sluiskil, and Ørsted also. Phase two is yet to be decided, but that has a capacity of between 5 and 6 million tons per year, and the investment decision on phase two will be made hopefully this spring. Now moving on, and yes, I should say, so total capex for this project is roughly, again, don't quote me on the exact numbers, but roughly around 3 billion euros. And the government, the Norwegian government, covers about 2/3 of that bill, and that includes capex and 10 years OPEX. This shows the receiving terminal. It's not 100% up to date because the receiving terminal is now complete and ready to receive CO2. This is on the west coast outside the city of Bergen. You can see the quayside where the ships will come in, and you can see the tanks where the volumes will be temporarily stored. And just to the right of the tanks, where you see some a blue little triangle, if you like, sticking up, that is the pipeline going down. So the pipeline goes down and follows the seabed out, and then into the well. This is a fantastic venue, and you know, key characteristics. You can see that the terminal building, I don't know if you see it on your screens, but the terminal building is actually on stilts. And this is not because they are inspired by California, but it's because CO2, of course, as everyone knows, is heavier than air. And if there is a leak, CO2 will lie under the building, and that's a safety measure that they put in. So it's a fantastic state-of-the-art facility, and it receives a lot of attention internationally. We've been fortunate enough to host hundreds of international delegations to this venue. And of course, it coexists with a lot of other industries as well. Just as a curiosity, on the photo here, you can see some circles right behind this little island or this little piece of land sticking out, and that's actually a fish farm. So this has a happy coexistence with other industries in the area. The terminal is finished. The transport link, in this case, the ships, one of the 2 ships that has been commissioned so far, is received in Norway and was actually christened last week. The Northern Pioneer was christened by Tina Bru, Member of Parliament, Deputy Leader in the Conservative Party and previous Minister of Energy in Norway. So this was a great addition and another milestone that we have celebrated recently. The ships are built in China and are state-of-the-art technology. Now, building something from scratch is one thing. Building something in a brownfield environment is something different altogether. This is the cement factory on the east coast of Norway. It's a 107-year-old cement factory. So retrofitting that with the technology needed to capture and ship the CO2 is of course a different project than starting from scratch on a greenfield development. The plant has managed to stay more or less on time in its development plans, more or less on budget, and it's managed to be operational more or less throughout the period of construction. So it's another successful part of this puzzle that is the Longship project. We are now nearing completion on this part as well. We have reached what we call mechanical completion. We celebrated this, and to the left you see my boss, the Minister of Energy, Mr. Terje Aasland, just a few weeks ago, celebrating mechanical completion. And of course, the big team involved in building this part of the project is also vitally important, and we're celebrating with the minister only a few weeks ago. So we're very happy now, and we are looking at now going through the commissioning phase, and hopefully we'll have a test load coming out of the plant on or before May 1st this year. And the whole project we are aiming for I don't know, it's fully operational, but at least operationally before the summer. The final part of this puzzle, which I briefly mentioned on my map, is the waste incineration plant, the Celsius waste incineration plant. It's the biggest waste incineration plant in the Oslo region, and has a lot of the waste and treats a lot of the waste from the capital Oslo. And it's right outside the city center, and the smoke coming out is a bit of a landmark, but hopefully we will see capture from this facility as well. They made their investment decision only a few weeks ago, so they are slightly behind. They had a revised schedule after a cost revision some time ago. They have started construction already, and hopefully they will have finished their part of the project by 2029. In addition to being an important part of the city of Oslo's climate budget, so it's important for the city of Oslo. This is also a very important part of what Norway sees as its contribution to CO2 storage. There are about 500 larger waste incineration plants in Europe alone. And if we can prove, as we believe we can, that this will work, then the scope and possibilities for waste treatment in Europe and beyond, of course, are quite impressive. So there we have it. Now going back to policies, the Norwegian perspective has been, as I said, a strongly subsidized state-backed kickstart through the Longship project, through its ownership and the TCM test facility. We have now more or less reached that point, and our thinking has now evolved to what do we do once Longship is operational this summer. There are developments that we are now thinking about. We will support not through direct subsidies of one specific project, but we will now move in the direction of framework conditions and subsidies that are not project specific, that will support point-to-point value chain developments in Norway and potentially beyond. This will be subsidies of transport, storage, buying of volumes. We are considering an auction, a state-backed or state-supported auction or more. So we are now starting to think about what do we do next. There are a lot of industries in Norway that are asking for help in this area. We are saying we will not do another Longship project where we have spent billions of euros, but we are saying we will be providing predictable and generous support mechanisms that will enable point-to-point projects also going into the future. Longer term, as I said initially, we believe that the liquid market with increasing prices of CO2 emissions will create functioning markets sometime in the future. But that, of course, is perhaps in the time sort of perspective of 2035, 2040, 2045. Again, don't quote me on that, but we're looking at 2040 closer than 2030 probably for the market to be sufficiently efficient and work on its own. Now, what I haven't mentioned so far is storage. This particular project that I've been through, the Longship project, has one storage facility. There are a number of other storage licenses also awarded, and we're again talking only subsea storage in Norway. If you sum up the upside of the potential, or if you sum up the volumes in the applications that we've received and the awards that we've given out, we are talking more than 50 million tons of CO2 per year at injection rates. So the scope is there. The storage part is not aimed at the Norwegian policies as such, but these are rewarded to commercial companies, some of which are energy companies that you will recognize the names of, some of which are more focused companies that focus on this solely. But the volumes, the storage volumes that we have the potential to offer on the Norwegian continental shelf through these licenses are aimed at mainly covering European demand, as the scene there is different altogether with regards to storage. Of course, we are fortunate to have storage offshore, which is slightly easier and creates slightly less NIMBYism. And again, it's up to the operators of these storage sites to engage in contractual agreements with whoever are willing to do so. But that is just to say that the storage part is not forgotten, and it's part of a bigger picture, and we expect Norwegian industry to be a significant part of that story. That more or less concludes my presentation for now. I think I've spent my 15 minutes and then some. So again, Norway is a small country. We are really leading the way on CO2 storage. We are aiming to contribute to advancing this technology and this industry, and look forward to the future.
All right, Mr. Albert, many thanks for your really detailed, informative sharing of Norwegian and Europeans' leading experience in financing and partnership, as well as the specific technology solution of CCUS project. I'm sure this is a very solid presentation for our audience who are eager to get more insights and lessons from the mature CCUS markets, such as Norwegian. And during your presentation, we've received some questions, and I'm sure our audience are also eager to learn what is the answer from your end. So first of all, even though, as we all know, Norway and the MENA region are actually two quite independent markets for CCUS, but we are actually curious, are there any business opportunities for these two regions to collaborate on the supply chain, such as technology sharing or financial investment?
I think there's plenty of scope for that. We have, of course, with regards to technology sharing, first of all, I mean, we've been, as I said, quite open that a lot of the technology that we have developed and are developing through the Longship project and the TCM is open source and available for sharing. So there's ample opportunities to tap into our key findings from a lot of these projects. There is ample investment opportunities, I think, as we go into the future. Of course, Longship phase 1, as I said, is now more or less finished, but we are really working hard to keep the momentum up. We have a few technology providers that are dominating the market in Norway now, but this is an international market, and our position has been crystal clear all along. We want to be non-technology specific. We do not pick winners in this field. We want to be very open and transparent to technology providers from around the world that have interests in providing their technology in Norway. With regards to investment opportunities, I'll leave that with the investors to ponder over. But again, the key message I think from Norway is that we are very much open for business in this area. We are foreseeing quite a rapid development of several storage projects, several transport projects, and again, Longship is one relatively closed loop project. But we're now, as we move into more commercial storage, we're talking about getting volumes from several different sources. We're talking not just about pipelines going out, but we're also talking about flexible solutions with offshore offloading and potentially, intermediate storage and so on and so forth. So I think, to be very sort of general, we are very much in the market for investments, technology development, and we are very, very open that we want not to pick winners from the government side, but provide a good framework for anyone that wants to be a part.
Thank you, Mr. Albert. So following up on my former questions, what do you think are the key transformable lessons that Norway could be implemented in UAE or KSA?
That's a very good question, and I don't really know the key challenges that well that you're facing. But I think, as I said, at least we know But we've seen some of the concerns we've seen from our European friends have been very much revolved around, storage and safety. We know that this works. We know it gets safer over time, not less safe. So that has been an important lesson that we've sort of contributed to providing to our European friends. And of course, we are very much open to sharing that with others as well. So to the extent that there are any sort of concern around any part of this value chain, I think we can provide experience and data that shows that, okay, fair enough, it's only a few decades, but still it's much more than most other people and nations can provide. So I think the safety aspect is one thing. I think I'll stop there, but there are just a number of takeaways that we can provide on a more detailed level as well.
Thank you, Mr. Albert, for all of your input, and we highly expect the development of the well-functioning market for CCUS, which is a significant interest in developing commercial CO2 storage on the Norwegian continental shelf. Thanks again for your participation of today's webinar.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And as we really conclude today's discussion, it's really clear that carbon capture, utilization, and storage is no longer an option, but also a necessity in achieving not only MENA's, but also global ambitions decarbonization target. Even though today we are touch upon too much about the global perspective, it's actually really exciting to see the momentums are actually taking shape from the global perspective. And there is actually so much reason for us to have the higher expectation about what is next for the MENA region's CCUS market. And for today's webinar, we actually unfortunately couldn't have Ms. Noah's presentation due to an emerging meeting from her end, but we will have highly expectation about her in-person presentation on our physical event, including Connecting Hydrogen MENA 2025 and the Carbon Capture MENA Summit, which will come in soon later this month. And looking forward, we really anticipate a surge in large-scale CCUS projects, advancements in carbon dioxide transportation and storage, integration of CCUS with hydrogen production to accelerate the region's transition to a sustainable energy future. Moreover, partnership between MENA region and a global leader, such as those we've discussed today, will be crucial in driving innovations, optimizing costs, and ensuring CCUS become commercially viable at scale. The discussion does not really end today. With only 2 weeks to go, we really invite you to get on board at the very last minute at our Carbon Capture MENA Summit 2025, taking place February 25 and 26 in Dubai. We will continue these high-level conversations, foster new partnerships, and explore actionable solutions alongside with our key stakeholders such as Adenauer Group, Saudi Aramco, Shell, ExxonMobil, OXY, Air Liquide, Gulf Crude, Lind, SUPIC, Ministry of Energy and Infrastructure of UAE, etc. Accelerating CCUS deployment across MENA region and beyond. On behalf of Leader Associates, I would like to express my most sincere appreciation to all of our esteemed speakers for sharing their deep expertise and strategic insights. I would also like to thank all of our engaged audience for your participation, thoughtful questions, and valuable contributions. Thank you once again for being part of today's session, and we really look forward to seeing you in Dubai soon. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.